Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 23 playthrough of the Pittsburgh Pirates. We are about to begin the 2043 season. What could be better than opening day in Cincinnati? And that's where Pittsburgh will be playing. Had a relatively unsuccessful spring training, 8-13 record. But more importantly than the lack of success on the field, which doesn't really matter, do have three players that are somewhat banged up as the season begins. Manho Lee, who is going to be near the back of our bullpen, pretty much out for the season with a torn labrum. Victor Serrano, our starting second baseman, out for another week or two with a strained oblique. And then Luis Flores, former Rule 5 acquisition, probably our starting first baseman, at least against either lefties or righties, more likely righties, out for about a month. So banged up a little bit. That allows us to get a look at a few new players on our 26-man roster. Not a ton of key additions from the offseason. Mario Tolka is a trade that we made, new addition. And then Ricky Rios similarly picked up in a trade. Rios we got for arbitration eligible players that we needed to move on from because of a lack of cash. And then Tolka we got in a trade for a prospect. Not a ton of big changes to the everyday lineup either. Nelson Ibarra is going to be our starting catcher. He's another guy that we picked up when we traded away arbitration eligible players that we were not able to afford. And then Juan Rivera is a player that we picked up in a trade with Seattle where we gave up a decent but not great outfield prospect to give us another infielder. Other than that, other than some filler at the back end of the 26-man lineup, should be pretty familiar names for those of you who have been watching this series over the past few years. And we certainly thank everyone who's been watching this Pirate series. I guess it's not even a few years anymore. This is the start of our 6th season as general manager of the Pirates. And I guess it's generally been successful. We've made the playoffs 3 times. Each time we had a winning record. We've snuck into the postseason. Last wild card, or not the last wild card last year, the second wild card 2 seasons ago. And then we actually won the NL Central back in 2039. That was a bit of a surprise. Financially, we're struggling. We've been really struggling to generate fan interest. We're still at a pretty mediocre level. We've had to drop our ticket prices, and even then, we're going to have a difficult financial season unless we can start winning some games and get the fans in Pittsburgh excited. So the hope is that we are solid on the field. You can see we still don't have a ton of money to spend. 29th, second to last in Major League Baseball in terms of the budget. Player payroll, only 27th. We are continuing to invest heavily in scouting and development and think that we do have a pretty solid farm system. We've dropped back a little bit, ranked 6th overall. But among our top prospects, I would expect that we will be seeing Henry Gonzalez and Jose Montoya in not too long. Basically, we're just keeping the two of them down for 3, 4, maybe 5 weeks to, one, give them a little more seasoning in AAA to prove that they are truly ready, but 2, also to extend the period in which we will have team control over those players, trying to kind of push every lever we can to keep this Pirates team competitive given the budgetary constraints we're operating under. Goals for the year, we did extend longtime starter Bobby Gonzalez, so we got a few bonus points from owner Robert Nutting for that. And he expects us to reach the playoffs, and that's certainly our goal as well. Taking a look at the latest preseason predictions, and we're expected to be 85-77. That seems in the right neighborhood to me. We lost a ton of talent from last year's team in terms of free agents like longtime starter Ricky Gotti, who left us, as well as a number of key arbitration eligible players that I've already talked about who we traded away because we weren't going to be able to afford them. So I would think it makes sense if we take a little bit of a step back. That said, it looks like 85 wins would get us tied for the final wild card with the Rockies, a game ahead of the Nationals. So it would mean that we are in the playoffs if we can execute on this. Looks like Isaiah Hill expected to have another big year, and looks like both Luis Longoria and Tony Santana expected to have pretty productive years on the mound. So we will see how the season goes. It's time for the first pitch. And it's been a good start to the season for the Pirates in the month of March. Unfortunately, we didn't play too many games that counted there, but we took 3 out of 4 in the opening series at Cincinnati. And then we just won our first home game of the year against St. Louis. I think they are at least a 2-time defending division champion right now and clearly expected to win again this year. So obviously good to get a W in the column against the Cardinals. First place for us, obviously, very early stages of this season. Actually, we're tied with St. Louis. They were 4-0, I guess, in their first series, and we just handed them their first loss of the year. So extremely small sample size, but nice to get off to a decent start. And in that extremely small sample size, Isaiah Hill is on pace for a triple crown. For some reason, I don't expect he's going to remain on pace for 162 home runs and a 565 batting average, but we will see how far he falls off that pace. And as part of his fantastic start to the season, Isaiah Hill ran his hitting streak to 25 games from last year. Obviously, finally stopped today against Atlanta, although we did get yesterday, or a few days ago against Atlanta. Sorry, I'm all messed up here. Those are a few days old, the news that I'm talking about. But a 7-3 record for Pittsburgh, and Isaiah Hill still off to a blistering start for the heart of our batting order and the heart of our team. And Victor Serrano is ready to come back, have some interesting decisions to make. We kind of got excess older outfielders right now, and we haven't gotten much out of Bobby Cintrone. He's got 1 hit and 7 at-bats. Julio Mendoza, another guy who we picked up as a free agent, minor league free agent, is hitting a little better and playing a little more often, but clearly his playing time is going to be severely compromised with the addition of Serrano back onto the roster. So given that my expectation is that Bobby Cintrone is a little bit better of a hitter, I think for the meantime we're going to send Mendoza down, although I think we're going to have to waive and DFA him to be able to do that. So hopefully he'll be able to sneak into AAA for us. Bring Serrano back up, who will become our starting second baseman again. I think that'll send Juan Rivera, the offseason acquisition, into more of a utility role. And then once Flores is ready, we're going to have to make a decision on one of the extra outfielders, Bobby Cintrone, Omar Vieira, or Andres Mendez. And I think with Mendez being the youngest, even though he's not necessarily much better than the other guys and is pretty brutal defensively, probably will keep him around just because he is a younger player than the other two. Maybe some hope that he, if he doesn't get a little better, at least takes him a little while compared to 34-year-old Vieira and the 30-year-old Cintrone before they begin perhaps deteriorating and losing some of their skills a little bit. And as we get close to the end of the month of April, Pirates are 16-13, so 2 games behind in the Central. Not playing great, not playing horrible, just kind of hanging in there, but we do have potential for some of our young prospects to hopefully help our offense and our pitching staff soon. Speaking of our pitching staff, Luis Longoria, our brilliant but fragile ace, just spun a no-hitter, 2-2 record with a 2.65 ERA on the year, 48 strikeouts in 34 innings, and he got the first no-hitter of his career in a 13-0 win yesterday against Milwaukee. So the goal with Longoria is just to keep him healthy. he is getting to the point where his contract is going to start getting high. This is his last year at the major league minimum. Going to be expected to make close to $5 million next season. If he throws another no-hitter this year and remains healthy, it's possible that number could be even higher. But we'll deal with that in the off season. I guess we could see what he's thinking in terms of a contract extension right now. Yeah, not really interested in a multi-year deal, just looking for way more than his arbitration number. So no interest in doing that at this point. Getting too close to the point for decision time on a lot of aspects of our team. We did send Luis Flores to AAA since he missed most of spring training on that rehab assignment. You can see he's gotten a few hits down there, batting .263 and 19 at-bats, so 5 for 19. He will be back soon, and then we're going to have some decisions to make about our roster, and clearly getting close to the point. We're going to wait till the end of the month to see where we are with the likes of Henry Gonzalez and whether it's time to bring him up now that he's been down there long enough that he will hopefully remain under control for an extra season. Last time I checked in on him, he hadn't even hit a home run yet, so we'll see whether he has improved upon that by the end of the month of April, and then maybe it'll be time to bring him up as well. So going to be some changes to our 26-man roster likely over the next week or so of game time. And with Flores pretty much ready to go, it's time to send down either Bobby Cintrone or Omar Vieira. Cintrone hitting .278 with a homer and 18 at-bats. He's started 6 games for us. Vieira hitting .421 with a homer in 19 at-bats. He's only started twice. Obviously a small sample size for both. Andres Mendez, who's younger, is hitting .367 in 30 at-bats. He's started 5 games, so I think his spot is safe. I think we are going to send Bobby Cintrone down. Again, I think we probably have to waive and DFA him. Yep. Now, we did get the second baseman that we sent down a few weeks ago through waivers, so he's in AAA. Obviously, the hope is on the margin that Cintrone, the same thing happens to him. We had thought about potentially putting Flores in the minors this year. Again, he was a Rule 5 draft pick from us a little over a year ago. Up all season last year where he kind of handled major league pitching decently. Not a ton of power, but great personality, good speed. He knows how to bunt and a pretty good contact hitter. Looks like he can be a pretty good extra base hitter, even though he's not going to hit a lot of home runs. So although he theoretically can improve his contact and is avoiding strikeouts a little bit, he's a good enough player that I just don't see much purpose in keeping him down in AAA for the long term. But he could end up back there this year if he struggles a little bit and we need to make room for somebody on the roster. But for the time being, he's back in the majors, and I think he will probably slot right in as a starting first baseman for us. Yep, against right-handers, he is back in the lineup as our first baseman. And we've made it to the beginning of May, and in terms of players we may need to be bringing up, Jose Montoya, who is another guy who is expected to join the team too, join the major league team. Jose Montoya, who we expect to join the major league team soon, had a fantastic year and a fantastic month in Indianapolis. 38 and a third innings, 27 strikeouts, 2.82 ERA, 5-0 record. We've had him down there. He still has some work to do on his control and his slider, but he can certainly develop at the major league level. Pitching over a run improvement in his ERA in a small sample size this year, number 51 prospect in baseball. So he is getting close. And Bobby Astorga, who is in Double-A, off to a nice start there also, 3-0 record with a 2.01 ERA. So some of the young pitching that we have been investing in over the past few years is getting closer and closer to major league ready and doing a pretty good job in the minors, which is nice to see. And at the major league level, it was kind of a meh month after that nice start in March, 14 and 14 in April. See, we are second in the National League in runs scored. Amazing. And we're tied for second in runs allowed. So the fact that we're only 18 and 15 is kind of shocking. Our starters ERA is sixth. That kind of tells us, maybe we want to be thinking about bringing up Montoya sooner rather than later. Looking at the pitching, certainly Longoria, Santana, and Gonzalez doing better than expected on all fronts, but Heriberto Rosales off to a rough start. Omar Gaona is 3-0 with a 4.09 ERA. I would have thought that Gaona would be the guy that we would be moving to the bullpen when it was finally time to bring Montoya up. But with the way Rosales is pitching, maybe we move Rosales to the pen for a while. So that's going to be an interesting decision. Taking a look at our offense, which has been shockingly good. No shock that Isaiah Hill, 333 average, 14 homers, 37 ribbies, leading the team in WAR. Getting a nice season from Herrera so far. Serrano, since he came back, has been good. Alex Perkins looks like he's bouncing back from a bit of a sophomore slump last year. Tony Cota, not the biggest offensive player in the world, but he is a excellent defensive shortstop for us. That's why he's out there. The new catchers, Nelson Ibarra, who we traded for, and then Ishmael Heel, who we finally brought up from spending the last few years in AAA, are hitting acceptably in the case of Ibarra and exceptionally in the case of Heel, but I certainly don't expect that he's going to be a .417 hitter. Last year's Rookie of the Year, Sean Barley, not hitting all that well, .184 batting average, so he appears to be following Alex Perkins with a sophomore slump after a Rookie of the Year season. I do think that Alex Perkins is a better player than Barley, so a little less surprising to me that Barley may be slipping back, but hopefully he can get things righted. Still obviously a relatively small sample size with just 103 at-bats, but with the Pirates offense performing the way it has, not a ton of urgency to make a move. You know, when we look at the expanded standings here, we should be 23 and 10 with the incredible run differential we have. So we're 5 games below our Pythagorean expectations. Hopefully it doesn't come back to haunt us that we haven't been winning some games that we probably should have. Seems like we've been blowing teams out a lot. And then awful. Yeah, 2-9 in one-run games. Hopefully that is something that rights itself. Because we're either blowing people out or losing close games. Clearly not a recipe for success. If we remain with the second best offense and the second best pitching in the National League, we'll clearly be a playoff team. But I don't think we can count on our offense really being that good. We were a mediocre offense last season, and on balance, I think we have less good offensive players now than we did then with the several players, starting catcher, starting third baseman, as well as a couple of first basemen / outfielders who kind of played DH for us over the last 2.5 months of the season after we picked them up in trades from the Nationals. So our offense should be weaker, and it's thus far been much better. I'm not going to complain about that, although it probably seems like I am. But I do think that that's a sign that maybe we want to see what's going on with our friend in AAA, Henry Gonzalez, and see how his season's going down there. And he has kind of turned things around. When I checked in him a couple of weeks ago, he had no home runs, 8 ribbies, and was hitting .246. He's got that batting average up to .329 right now. He also has an excellent eye, walks a lot, excellent on base percentage. Still has some growth as far as his contact. He could get much better there, and his home run power, he could get much better there. But I think I don't have a ton of confidence that we're going to continue to be as good an offensive team as we have been. And given that he's now been down there for 33 games, should be long enough that he's been down there that we'll get the extra year of service time out of him by being kind of scuzzy front office. So we need to find a way to get Mr. Gonzalez back up. And honestly, it's probably not going to be too long until we're doing the same thing with Jose Montoya. Probably will give Heriberto Rosales 1 or 2 more starts just to see if he can straighten himself out. Basically, it's just a battle over the next couple of weeks between Rosales and Gaona. Whoever pitches better out of those two probably stays in the rotation, and whoever pitches worse out of those two probably moves to the bullpen when we decide to bring up Mr. Montoya. But right now, we are finally going to be seeing the major league debut of Henry Gonzalez. First year of this playthrough, we lucked into winning the draft lottery and had the number 1 pick in the entire draft. And Henry Gonzalez was our choice. Less than 5 years later, he is finally prepared to make his major league debut, which will hopefully make him happier and interested in seeing what he can do. Can see his infield ratings are really not that impressive. We're going to set his position back to being an outfielder, although it's conceivable to me we may end up playing him at first base, but certainly a competent defensive outfielder who also can play first base for us if we need his bat there. And we're going to make a potentially controversial move. Last year's Rookie of the Year, Sean Barley, as we talked about, not hitting much, hitting just a .184, and he is only playing against lefties as our DH. Not that great defensively, and when we look at his offensive profile, he's a fine hitter, but nothing exceptional. Although he was Rookie of the Year last year, hit .286 with 9 home runs and 332 at-bats. It was not a Isaiah Hill type, Fred Lynn type, Ichiro Suzuki type of dominant, impressive Rookie of the Year season. He's also 26 years old, almost 27, so it wasn't like he was viewed as a top prospect by the time we brought him up. I had thought about sending Omar Vieira down, but Vieira's batting profile actually looks better to me, and he is hitting .421 for us. So I think I'd rather keep Vieira up for now, even though it's going to be a bench role for Vieira. And Barley clearly going to be losing time. He would clearly be out of the lineup when we bring up our top prospect anyways. He's got 1 option year left. I'm sure he's not happy about that, but we need to ensure that Henry Gonzalez gets at-bats, and let's see what Jan Vasquez wants to do with Henry Gonzalez. He wants to DH him all the time, which is fine, I guess. I think he's pretty close to Isaiah Hill in left field in terms of his skill. And in right field, Alex Perkins has the great arm, but I do feel a little bit like I'd like to see Henry Gonzalez play in the field a little bit. I think at the very least I'm going to put a little less wear and tear against left-handed pitching for Isaiah Hill, move our star to DH, and let Henry Gonzalez get a little experience in the field at the major league level playing left against lefties. Time for his major league debut. Let's see if Henry Gonzalez can help this team. Certainly like seeing him at the top of the order with the amount of walks that he can potentially generate, in addition to having plus contact that hopefully will get even better. Part of the reason there is that I like Luis Flores batting first. He's got a good eye also, pretty good contact and gap power. I'm just letting my manager make these decisions, but I do like those decisions a bit. So Henry Gonzalez, after almost a 5-year wait, is ready to make his major league debut for the Pittsburgh Pirates. And we were 13-3 winners in Henry Gonzalez's first game. Hopefully that means that he had some offense. Isaiah Hill, 4 for 4, a homer, a double, and 2 singles. So he continues to have a monster season. And Henry Gonzalez with a pretty impressive start also. 2 for 4, 2 runs driven in, 1 run scored. Sounds like maybe a homer. No. Not even any extra base hits. So couple of singles for him, but still a nice start to his major league career with 2 hits and 4 at-bats in addition to a walk. Looks like he played a little bit of center and left, so good to see. Because we must have needed a rest for our starting center fielder. So Gonzalez certainly does have the range to at least be a backup starting center fielder for us. Probably don't want him out there every day in a perfect scenario, but good to see the youngster's career off to a good start, and good to see Isaiah Hill continuing to have another monster season for us. And it looks like the only way that you can stop Isaiah Hill is to get him suspended. It looks like he got into a fight with a pitcher yesterday. I'm assuming that Dave Abreu of the Cardinals was not being appropriate in terms of the pitches and the closeness to Isaiah Hill's head that he was throwing them. So I think that Isaiah Hill's response was perfectly justified to protect himself. But he did get suspended for 4 games, which is a bit of a bummer, because that's the only thing that's going to potentially disrail this brilliant season that he's having for us. And we've simmed ahead another couple weeks to mid-May. Pirates 28-20 in first place. It is a hard-fought battle in the NL Central, though. We're tied with Milwaukee, 2.5 ahead of St. Louis. So it looks like it's going to be a battle all season. We are 7-3 over our last 10, so playing a bit better. You can see Isaiah Hill still here in the middle of May in the mix for a potential triple crown, leading the league in batting, second in home runs, first in runs batted in. So the brilliant career of Mr. Isaiah Hill continues. Speaking of brilliant early-stage careers, Luis Longoria healthy so far for us. 4-2 record, 1.93 ERA, and 80 strikeouts in 56 innings. In addition to that, no-hitter. So things are going well for the Pirates. Checking in on the team statistics. Still second in runs scored, and we've improved to first in runs allowed. Starters ERA improved to 4th in the National League. So the urgency to bring up Montoya is abating a bit. That said, Heriberto Rosales still pitching very poorly. I think it may be time for us to get him into the bullpen. Let's see how Mr. Montoya is doing, and he is still really good. 6-1 record, 3.08 ERA down in AAA. Still his work to do on his control and that slider, but he is certainly a more than acceptable major league pitcher at this point. With the struggles that Rosales has been having, I think it probably makes sense to figure out what we need to do to our pitching staff to get Mr. Montoya up. And given that it's May 18th and he only has 9 days of major league service, similar to what we did with Henry Gonzalez, should weasel our way into an extra year of control for Mr. Montoya, hopefully. And speaking of Mr. Gonzalez, his career's off to a pretty good start. 340 batting average with 4 home runs in his first 53 at-bats. So he had not been exceptional at AAA when he came up at the end of 2041, and then last year was definitely disappointing down there, but the little bit of extra seasoning the first couple weeks of this season, switch seems to have gone off with him batting for a much higher average. His on-base percentage at the major league level is almost 500 at this point. You know, we're in kind of a prime Barry Bonds kind of territory with a number like that, which is absolutely insane. Certainly don't expect him to keep hitting like this, but thus far he is certainly living up to his number 1 overall pick status from 5 years ago, and certainly even probably outplaying his number 30 prospect ranking. And the tricky thing when we look at our pitching staff is that Rosales, as we've talked about, has been bad. But there's been basically exceptional to acceptable performances from everyone in the bullpen. Same thing with the rest of our starting rotation. Rosales isn't going to like this, especially after just turning 30 years old. But he does have 1 option year left. I think we need to get him down to AAA to see if that can help him right the ship. He may not be pleased about that, and he refuses the demotion, which is going to kind of push us to another level. Collazo, Gaylord, Tolka, those guys aren't going anywhere. Elijah Helton and Tony Jones are both pitching great. So is Ricky Rios, and Nick Jarmon has been fine. He should still have option years. Or no, he is out of option years. That's surprising. Although we did pick him up in the Rule 5 draft, so he had probably been playing in the majors for some time before we got control of him, even though he was a relatively young player. So I'm not sure exactly what I want to do right now. I don't know if it's time to trade Heriberto Rosales or not. Longoria is going to start getting expensive. We've got Santana and Gonzalez locked up. Gaona is locked up on a similar contract to Rosales. I don't think there's going to be a ton of interest in him, and I'd certainly prefer to keep him around. He has been a useful back end of the rotation arm for us over the course of his career. He's, as you can see, been a starter for us most of his career, and pretty much all of that time has been our fifth starter since we took over in 2038. Occasionally moved up to the 4-hole when somebody was hurt. But ultimately, he's been a little bit of a below average pitcher as far as his ERA plus and his FIP minus. I'd like to keep him in the organization. He's a great insurance policy. But there's nobody else that deserves to be demoted, that's for sure. I mean, Nick Jarmon would be the other guy, just kind of looking at his ratings, that I might think about, since his stuff is just not that impressive. It's hard to take Gaona out of the rotation with the way that he's been pitching. He does have an option year left too, but I don't know that I demote Omar Gaona simply because Heriberto Rosales doesn't want to go down to AAA. It's a tough decision. I don't know what to do. I think this team has been functioning pretty well with 12 pitchers and 14 position players, so I don't want to go back to 13 and 13. Could certainly take it out on a position player and send them down, but I don't think that's the right decision. Because although we don't have quite the same stamina across our pitching staff as we did in the early stages of this playthrough when everyone could really be a starting pitcher, with the exception of Mario Tolka, everyone could be. Elijah Helton with 40 stamina could still give you 4 innings plus probably. Not all these guys have 3, 4, 5 pitches, but still got a lot of stamina on our team. So don't feel as if we need to go to 13 pitchers. I can't imagine there's going to be much of a trade market for Rosales, but let's at least see what the options are there in terms of prospects. Just the Blue Jays interested in him. If there's a pitcher there, it could be kind of interesting. Tony Delgado, not much of a hitter, acceptable defensive player. Svatoslav Vavra, not a typical baseball player name. Not that exciting. Certainly would like to get more for a player like Rosales. And I don't want to have to get rid of Rosales. I think he's got value for us. Clearly, if we waive and DFA him, the Blue Jays would pick him up. I don't know if anybody else would. I'm going to have to give this some thought. And I don't really know what to do. So I think I'm just going to wait. I don't know if I'm hoping for a minor injury to one of my pitchers or exactly what I'm hoping for. But we are playing well, even with Rosales going every 5th day. Maybe just give it another week and see what things look like. There's just nobody else that I can justify sending down to AAA or waiving and DFAing instead of Rosales. But I think he's got more value than we were offered by Toronto for him. He's probably going to be a player even if we do somehow get him to AAA, that is going to be pitching important innings for us at some point this year when we have other injuries. So I think I'm just going to sim another week, see how it goes, and keep thinking about what I want to do with Mr. Rosales. But that definitely sucks for Montoya down in AAA because he's absolutely ready to be a major league pitcher at this point. I think he'll still get some good coaching down there, hopefully keep working on that one pitch that isn't quite major league ready, and keep working on his control. It's not the end of the world, but if we were 20-28 instead of 28-20, I'd feel a lot more urgency to make the move today. But I think we can hopefully wait another week or two, and maybe it will resolve itself. Maybe if Rosales keeps getting bombed, he'll be more willing to go down to AAA. We'll see. And we're through the month of May. The Pirates playing some excellent baseball. Record up to 38-22, first place in the NL Central. And Henry Gonzalez, Rookie of the Month, his first full month as a major leaguer. 309 batting average, 6 homers, 22 ribbies. So off to an excellent start in his career. While we're talking about Gonzalez, some of you may remember that when we picked him number 1 overall, there was a catcher that was interesting that we had thought about and that some of you actually thought we should have taken, and I can't say I disagree with you. Ivan Hinojosa ended up going 3rd overall in that draft, and we happened to, as his career kind of got derailed a little bit and he just didn't develop the way as expected, we happened to pick him up in a trade with Cleveland before last season. But Hinojosa's career just is not developing, hitting a .151 in AA for us this year. He's still respectable defensively, still a nice personality, but looks that it is very unlikely that he's ever going to be a productive major league hitter. Could he get a September call-up as a 3rd catcher or something with us, or if we have some significant catcher injuries over the next couple years, maybe be a backup for us? Possible, but with that bat, sad story of a player that just did not develop as it looked like he might when he was a prospect several years ago. Taking a look at our pitching staff, Rosales has been a little better over his last couple starts. And there's still no obvious people to send down or do anything with. I'm guessing he's still not going to be willing to go down. Yeah, still refuses the demotion. Have a hard time believing that the trade options for him are materially different than they were before. We'll throw in regulars also. I have a suspicion that we're not going to be all that thrilled with any of the regulars that we get offered for him. Yeah, looks like a lot of mediocre relief pitchers. Alex Bravo from the Padres is a guy. Ignacio Vega from the Padres. He's not horrible. Just turned 26 years old. Kind of an interesting bat for the infield with that blistering speed. He's just not that great a fielder. I mean, he's a second baseman by trade, but really more of an outfielder. Does still have 2 option years left, though. He's not a huge prospect, even though he was a 3rd-round pick a few seasons ago. Just don't know if he's ever going to really hit enough, and he also kind of has to be an outfielder, if you want to feel good about his defense. You can play him at outfield, you can play him at first base, but 2nd, 3rd, or short is where you'd prefer to play somebody with a bat like that that's not exceptional. And I just don't know that the bat is interesting enough. But if this kind of persists for a while and we just need to figure out a way to get Montoya up, Rosales doesn't pitch as well. Vega, I think, is one option. Oscar Gomez is a nice defensive shortstop, just not much of a hitter. Toronto, similar crew, not the exact same crew, but a similar crew to what they offered before. So still not a ton of demand for Mr. Rosales. David McManus is similar kind of back end of the rotation pitcher, but he's out of option years too. Not that Rosales is out of option years, but he would need to be waived and DFA'd to get to the minors, so that doesn't really help us. So I think we're just going to continue to wait and delay Montoya's debut with our team. Second in runs scored, first in runs allowed still as we begin the month of May, or begin the month of June. And looking at the standings, opened up a 3-game lead on the Cardinals, 7.5 on the Brewers, 8-2 over our last 10. So these Pirates are outperforming all of our expectations, that's for sure. It's got the feeling of a season that might end up being special. That said, fan interest is still getting lower, even though the Pirates are playing at over a 600 winning percentage. Still not selling out despite our low ticket prices, on pace to have lower revenue and lower attendance than a year ago, despite the fact that we were in the NLCS last season, made the playoffs 2 straight years, and we're now playing the best baseball that the Pirates have probably seen since the early 90s, although I guess there were those couple years in the 2000 teens when they were a decent team. But the financial situation here is just ugly. But we're playing good on the field, and that's what matters the most. If we win on the field, nothing else really matters. So we're going to keep trying to do that, but I do feel bad that it seems as if Mr. Montoya, with his 7-2 record and 3.96 ERA, is kind of stuck in AAA. It looks like he hasn't been performing as well recently with the ERA going up that high. He's angry now because he's not in the majors. I get that anger. Looks like his control actually regressed a little bit according to our scout. I think it was 55 out of 60 before, and he's still working on that slider. But if he's angry, maybe he's not going to progress as much there. I'm just not sure what to do. Honestly, I am sure what to do. We got to get Montoya up to the majors. Rosales has been my safety net, my safety blanket, is our number 5 starter for the last several years. But if you're not going to take the assignment down to AAA, we're not going to let you stand in the way of a top prospect anymore. We've got guys who can fill in as a 4th or 5th starter if we do end up having some injuries and we don't have Rosales around. And we've also got, with the likes of Sal Valadez, who's 5-3 with a 2.61 ERA and AA. Bobby Astorga, who we talked about earlier, 7-0 with a 2.45 ERA and AA. And Juan Bin Daoud, 4-2 with a 1.75 ERA and AA. Those guys are chomping at the bit to get up to AAA. The starting pitchers that we've been investing in the draft and international free agency, and in the case of Montoya, by trading away one of the top prospects in baseball, are on their way. I don't feel like we need to let Heriberto Rosales hold this franchise hostage anymore with his refusal to go down to AAA. So now we just got to figure out who we want to pick up for him in trade and move on from Mr. Rosales. And I am kind of drawn to Ignacio Vega. I do like the fact that he's got 2 option years left. I love his speed. That's something that we probably need more of on the Pirates. He's got enough of a bat and that gap power with that speed. He should be slapping doubles and triples all over the field. You can see in 190 at-bats in AAA this year, he does have 15 doubles and 5 triples. Never going to hit for a huge average. I don't think he's a starting player, particularly with that glove, because he doesn't hit enough to be an outfielder. Doesn't hit enough to be a corner outfielder. Isn't good enough defensively to be an everyday center fielder, and isn't good enough defensively that you'd want him to be a starting infielder. But I think with the traits that he has, he can kind of become a very useful utility player for us who can pinch run, who can play a lot of different positions at a acceptable to less than acceptable level defensively while still not being a horrible bat. And we can still stash him in the minors for another season or two with those option years to train him up in a bunch of different positions. So I think we're going to try to trade Rosales for Vega, see what else we can get the Padres to give us for him, obviously. And we can get them to hold on to 55% of Vega's salary. The other positive thing with this trade is that we'll be taking off some salary by trading Rosales, and that's actually going to mean that we'll have a little bit of money to take on contracts if we do this. If it seems like we're a pretty competitive team this year. We are going to try to push when we've got an opportunity to maybe win something, and you can see we've got no money for free agents right now. So the other thing I like about this trade is it will free up a little bit of money that we can potentially take on contracts with as we get closer to the trade deadline. If there's someone out there that can help kind of push us further towards a playoff berth and maybe a long playoff run. So Mr. Rosales, you've been an excellent number 5 starter for us for the better part of 5.5 seasons, but it is time to move on. And of course, the fans disappointed. I cannot deal with the. He's been with the team a long time, so I get it. But you're playing .600 baseball, and you trade away a 5th starter with a 6 ERA. And fewer fans are going to come out to watch your team. I'm getting a little obsessed with this as we're playing the Pirates, a team where it really matters, every point of that fan interest. But it definitely does seem like the dynamic of fan interest in the game engine for OOTP, from my perspective, is a much blunter tool than it needs to be and it should be. And with that, we will move on from the public service announcement part of this playthrough to finally let Mr. Jose Montoya make his major league debut. Well, not his major league debut, but his debut with the Pirates. He's going to slide right into that 4-hole. That improves his morale, which is nice to see. We're going to see what Montoya can do at the major league level. Still would like if that slider and his control gets a little better, but he's certainly proven just about everything he needs to prove in AAA, even though, honestly, his ERA plus has been a little below average. His FIP minus has been a little above average, but he's almost 25 years old. Picked him up in that big trade with the Angels where we traded away one of the top prospects in baseball. Let's see how Mr. Aguilar is doing this year in his 2nd season. He's having another big year also. Part of the reason we were willing to trade him away was that we had Henry Gonzalez, who has now made his major league debut. But we knew that Aguilar's bat was going to potentially be special, and it certainly is looking that way at this point. But we now get to see Montoya in the majors, and Ethan Fox is also getting close to the majors. He's hitting .297 down in AAA for us. We are trying to just get him as versatile defensively as possible. He's probably a third baseman for us, but want him to have the capability to kind of play all over the field too. So we're working on that with him also. Hopefully we'll have him up soon, but Montoya is finally going to be making his major league or his Pirates Major League debut. He did have that one game with the Angels at the end of the 2041 season when he was dazzling, allowing 3 hits and no runs over 7 innings. And hopefully now he's going to begin a long Major League career. Is a key contributor to our rotation. And sometimes you can't make this stuff up. Of course, immediately after we trade away Rosales, we finally do have an injury to our pitching staff. Mario Tolka, the excellent reliever who we picked up in a trade last year, going to be out with a strained oblique for 5 weeks. So not optimal to be losing a key member of our bullpen, but Montoya was a lot better than Rosales has been pitching in his debut with us. You can see he has now pitched in 2 Major League games, 14 1/3 innings, and he has not allowed a run. So his Major League career was delayed, but 2 starts, 2-0 record, 4 hits allowed over 14 1/3 innings. I think he's going to be a keeper. And we're going to give Jim Quander a chance to see what he can do at the Major League level. Probably not quite ready. You can see he's really reliant on a fastball. His slider's not that great. His changeup is awful. But he has put up a 3.26 ERA in AAA. 9th round pick of ours back in 2039, only 22 years old. Give him a chance to see what he can do. Clearly, my expectation is he's going to be a long or middle reliever for us. We'll see what John Vasquez thinks. Yeah, he's going to be a middle reliever for us. We'll see what he can do. Not expecting too much from him, but don't also expect him to be pitching a lot of real high leverage innings. So we will see what he can do. And I'm going to use the fact that we've brought Quander up and that we've also obviously brought Montoya onto the team to bring up a couple of the other young prospects from AA. Juan Bin Daoud, 3rd round pick in that Henry Gonzalez draft, our first draft in 2038. 5-2 with a 1.68 ERA. Let's see what he can do in AAA. Similarly, Sal Valadez in what may be a pivotal draft for us was the 2nd round pick in that 2038 draft, behind Gonzalez and before Bin Daoud. He's been good this year. His first full year in AA, 6-3 with a 2.59 ERA. Still working on developing all 6 of the pitches in his potential 6-pitch arsenal, but his fastball and his sinker are certainly Major League ready, as are his change and splitter. Still working on the curve and the slider. Has really good movement, still working on his stuff a little bit, has acceptable control, but time to start testing some of these guys out at a higher level and see what Valadez and Juan Bin Daoud can do at the AAA level, and hopefully continue developing some of the prospects in our system. And we're midway through the month of June now. Been a little bit more of mixed results. Had a really good first week. A little more mixed this second week. Had a 4-game series against the Cardinals. Split that. And then we lost 2 out of 3 at Baltimore. So taking a look at the standings. Still in first place. 3.5 up on the Cardinals. Have the 4th best record in the National League, as the Rockies, Braves, and Mets all, in the case of the Mets and the Rockies, a little better than us, and the Braves have the best record in baseball, so they've been pretty impressive so far. But it's been a really good season. Hoping to keep it going. Isaiah Hill, as you can see, still 2nd in the National League in RBIs. Has slowed down a little bit, but a .312 batting average with 26 homers and 67 runs batted in through the middle of June. Certainly still an impressive season for him. Tony Santana with 10 wins, tied for the league in the National League, and Manny Collazo is 2nd in saves. Sure, you're wondering about the youngsters, so am I. Montoya has finally given up some runs, 4 ERA over 18 innings. Not a shock that he's not going to be perfect. Still pitching better than Heriberto Rosales was for us. Jim Quander has not been good. Very small sample size of only 2 2/3 innings, and he's striking out a ton of batters, but still allowing a ton of runs. I'd like to see a little more from him before we just decide to send him down. And then checking in on Henry Gonzalez, 333 batting average, 9 homers, 29 ribbies. He is absolutely as advertised so far for our number one draft pick from almost exactly 5 years ago as we get closer to the 2043 amateur draft. And a nice week for the Pirates. Isaiah Hill, 440 average, 11 for 25, 2 homers, 6 ribbies, National League Player of the Week. And Pirates with 6 wins in a row have now opened up a 6-game lead on the Cardinals. So things are going well. Obviously want to get the pitching staff back healthy. Tolka still out for another 3 weeks with that strained oblique. As we talked about at the start of the episode, Man-Ho Lee is likely out for the entire year. Jim Quander, I guess, pitching a little better. Has his ERA down to 9 over 6 innings, has struck out 11. Clearly not going to have any problem sending him back down when Tolka is ready with the way he's pitched thus far. But with the fact that the Pirates just keep winning and he actually hasn't been involved in any decisions, he's not hurting us too much as he's trying to learn a little bit at the major league level. And we've gotten to our mid-season review with Mr. Nutting. Pleased that we're playing so well and we should be in the postseason. Happy that we extended Gonzalez. Not too disappointed in our attendance. He's been happy with our progress. Look for the full evaluation in the second half of the year. He's saying all the nice things to us right now. I mean, quite honestly, he said it all last year when after we had a team that went to the NLCS, he only gave me a 1-year extension. So Nutting is still kind of a cheap penny pinching owner. But we're 53-28. We're first place in the NL Central. And we've done it all on a 29th in baseball budget, 28th in baseball player payroll with pathetic fan loyalty, small market size, and very mediocre fan interest. So he shouldn't be complaining to us about anything. He should be thanking his lucky stars that we're trying to fix this pathetic, cheap franchise that he's been running at this point for decades into the ground. And we made it to the month of July. Henry Gonzalez, Rookie of the Month for a second month in a row. So although his debut was delayed, through his first 54 games, he's hitting .321 with 11 doubles, 14 home runs, on-base percentage of .461 as he's walked 49 times. They moved him up to the number 19 prospect in baseball when they finally seen the way he can punish the ball at the major league level. So I think there's a chance that even with the delayed start, the fact that he's won Rookie of the Month in both May and June should be a pretty strong contender for Rookie of the Year, which would continue a crazy streak of rookie. Well, I don't know if it's really a streak. It would be a streak of 3 in a row with Gonzalez this year if he wins it, Barley last year, Perkins the year before that. So it would be a streak of 3 in a row for the Pirates, and then it would be 4 in 5 years since Isaiah Hill was Rookie of the Year and MVP in his debut season. So been a nice run here for the Pirates with some of the young talent that we've been developing. As the calendar turns to July, we're only up 4 on the Cardinals. They've been playing very well. So have we, with a 7-3 record over our last 10. Some really good teams in baseball this year. The Rangers playing at a .685 winning percentage. The Angels at .651. the Braves at 685, and then our Pirates at 648 are among the top teams in baseball. You can see we're up 4 on the Cardinals, and the Cardinals are up 2.5 on the Nationals for the third wild card spot, and they're up 6 on the Giants for just not being out of the playoffs. So we're up about 10 games on a playoff spot. Clearly, with the way we're playing at this point, want to win the NL Central and hopefully have one of the 2 best records among division winners in the National League to get that first round bye. But there's still obviously a lot of baseball that's going to be played between now and then that will determine exactly how we do. Taking a look at the team statistics through the first 3 months of the year, had another great month in June. Cooled off a little bit from the 20-7 record in May to 19-9 in June. We'll still take it. Slipping back a little bit, 3rd in the National League now in runs scored, and actually have slipped back to 2nd in runs allowed. But clearly that combination, if we're able to maintain a position in even the top 5 in runs scored, and if we maintain a top 3 position in runs allowed, should certainly be one of the top teams in the National League when we do get to the end of this season. Just basically need to remain healthy, and I'm pretty happy with what we've done. Tolka still 1 to 2 weeks away. Manho Lee, looks like a chance we could put him on a rehab assignment, maybe in AAA. Hard to imagine he'll have a prominent spot for us on the postseason roster or be a big factor for us. Jim Quander got his ERA down to 7 over 9 innings pitched. More importantly, to check in on Jose Montoya, has been pitching better lately. 3-1 record with a 2.52 ERA over 39 1/3 innings pitched. So the rookies are definitely helping us. Was concerned that we weren't able to do a lot this past off season with just the financial limitations we had, but did kind of hope that the fact that Gonzalez and Montoya were going to be on their way sooner rather than later, they would kind of serve as our big free agent / trade additions for the season by those guys making their major league debuts and hopefully contributing. And so far they've both been better than we could have expected. Hopefully they'll continue playing well over the remainder of the season. And before we finish off the episode, it's International Amateur Free Agent Day. The pitching is pretty brutal. Take a look at the hitters that are available. It looks like there's some definite top-end talent. Outfielders, as tends to be the case. Jesus Dominguez, center fielder, certainly looks like an interesting bat with that potentially exceptional contact and home run power. Dante Pimentel, like the personality, also looks like he could be a really interesting bat. Not as good defensively, but not as much speed. But with that personality and that potential bat, certainly a very interesting player. Like both of those guys. Danny Pietri, also a pretty interesting player. Might be the best defensively of that group. Certainly has the best speed. Not as dominant a contact and home run bat, but with the gap power and the best eye of the group. He's also an interesting prospect. He's also durable. So 3 interesting outfielders at the top of the group. Willie Rosas, third baseman. Just don't love the fielding. He's 6'3", so he could be a first baseman, but you don't even really want him in the outfield. Interesting player, like the work ethic, but he's a step down in my view from those outfielders, given his fact that he's really a first baseman / DH. Alfredo Bonillas, a little bit more of someone you could play at third base. Interesting-ish bat. 18 years old, doesn't excite me as much as the other prospects. And another third baseman, Heriberto Figueroa. Has the arm to play third. Interesting bat, like the fact that he's durable. Not much speed. I'd certainly think about Figueroa as a fallback. Looking at the other guys, Jose Baena, just not as good as those other outfielders. Victor Nunez, got to look at the catcher. Decent ability, not much of a bat. Meh. And Raul Perez. Love the gun in the outfield. Could be a great right fielder defensively. Decent bat. Again, I would think about a Raul Perez. I think I would think about a Heriberto Figueroa if we have to go to a guy that's not one of these top options. But honestly, Danny Pietri, like the durability, don't know the personality, so that scares me a little bit if he doesn't end up having a good work ethic. But he is an interesting bat. Dante Pimentel, you got the work ethic, you got a potentially big time bat. He's a left or a right fielder, which is fine. And then Jesus Dominguez, like the bat. I'm kind of intrigued by Danny Pietri, just because if he really develops the way that he could, with that durability, with that speed, has the ability to kind of play any outfield position, he's intriguing. I don't love that I don't know much about his personality. Dante Pimentel is going to be a hitter. Doesn't have enough speed. He's going to be a station-to-station player. But with that work ethic, you feel pretty confident that he's going to develop. I don't know. I just got a feeling about Danny Pietri. I feel like he's the most versatile of these players. I like the durability. Odds are we may not get any of the three, even if we pick one as our first pick. But we're going to go ahead and offer the full $5 million, which is what he's looking for, to Danny Pietri. So we'll go ahead and submit the offer to him. Find out what happens in our next episode, when we will be hopefully wrapping up international amateur free agent signings. Hopefully have a bunch of Pirates in the All-Star game. Hopefully do well in the amateur draft. And then we're going to have to figure out what we want to do in terms of trying to use the meager money that we have available to help this team. It is kind of depressing that the Pirates are having this incredible season and still only getting 32,000 people at the game and not even selling out every game, even though we've got pretty low ticket prices. The fan interest is really disappointing, but it is what it is. We will tackle that in our next episode, and tackle all of those things I just mentioned in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.